Welcome to the Marriage Steps podcast. We're reducing the divorce rate. One marriage at a time is the goal, and following my 6 marriage steps is a path to help get us there. I'm your host, Dr. Wyatt Fisher, licensed psychologist and marriage counselor. If you enjoyed the episode today, please scroll down on your device and leave a review by clicking the stars. The more positive reviews I receive, the higher the podcast will appear in search results so others can find it and receive tools for their marriage. Also, I'm hosting a live podcast on Fridays from 4 to 5 Mountain Standard Time, where I take phone calls with any questions about marriage. So be sure to call me at 720-999-9538, Fridays from 4 to 5 Mountain Standard Time. That's 720-999-9538. Today I'm going to talk about 5 reasons not to settle for an unhappy marriage. So to define my terms, settle means that you are unhappy because one of your top core needs are not being met, and you decide just to give up, that this is just how the rest of your marriage is going to be. That's what it means to settle, where something's really causing a lot of distress for you, and you decide to give up. And that's just how things are going to be. And you give up on that area that is so important for you because you feel like it can't change. So you give up. You stop trying. These things we give up on, again, are usually stemming from our core needs. So one core need that I've mentioned in other episodes for a lot of people is affection. Other people, it can be emotional intimacy, really wanting to share your inner world and hearing your partner's inner world. For other people, a core need could be sex. Another core need for people can be recreation, just doing fun things and activities together. And when our core needs aren't being met and our spouse doesn't seem receptive to change, somewhere along the line, a lot of us can give up and we just resign. We just wave the white flag. This is how it's always going to be. This is the reality of marriage. I might as well just give in. So I'm going to encourage you not to do that. So 5 reasons not to settle for an unhappy marriage, because there's so many unhappy marriages out there. There's much more unhappy marriages than happy marriages. And it's our natural drift to move towards being unhappy in marriage because we're imperfect people. We're living in close proximity with our partner. We're learning how to navigate this world of romance in a way that's mutually satisfying. And without intentional effort and mindfulness and ownership for our part, that can go off the rails very quick. So the first reason not to settle for an unhappy marriage is that marriage turns into a prison. So you may feel like you're in a prison right now. If some of your top core needs are not being currently met in your marriage and you've just given up on that ever being met, you probably feel like marriage is a prison. And that is such a hopeless despair type of feeling. So that's one reason never to settle for an unhappy marriage, is because you do not want your marriage to feel like a prison. Number 2, you may start outsourcing. If you're unhappy in your marriage because some of your top core needs are not being met, you are placing yourself at a high risk for outsourcing. And outsourcing can look a variety of different ways depending on what your core need is. So for example, if a core need is affection, you're not getting that in your marriage and you've given up on ever getting it in your marriage, you may open the door for Bob at work to start giving you hugs or start patting you on the shoulder or start rubbing your back when you're interacting. You may start opening the door to other people meeting that need that you wouldn't be otherwise because you've given up on ever getting that met in your marriage. Or perhaps you're not getting your emotional needs met. So you open the door for John in the cul-de-sac to come closer into your life, and you start sharing more of your internal thought process and your struggles and your problems with him, and he's sharing those with you. You've opened the door for someone else to meet your top needs. That's the first step to an affair. Or perhaps for you, it's sex. Your sexual needs are not being met in your marriage and you've given up on they're ever going to be met. So you open the door to chronic pornography and to joining a dating site just to start flirting with women, or to Jennifer at work because she's so sexy. You start opening the door to other people to meet that top need. For others of you, perhaps it is recreation. Your recreational desire is not met in your marriage and you've given up on it. You've settled. So you join some co-ed leagues and you start teaming up for doubles with tennis with Barbara, or you're pairing up with Janet when you play golf, and before long there's a connection there because you love the sport together. So that's another reason not to settle for an unhappy marriage, because it tempts you to start outsourcing to get that need met. And when we start outsourcing to get our needs met, it's one path towards an affair, one step in that direction. It's putting us in a highly tempting situation to develop a relationship with someone else. A third reason not to settle for an unhappy marriage is it doesn't hold your partner accountable. If you let them off the hook and they're not meeting your top need, and it seems like they don't care and they don't listen and they're not responding to your top need, and you just give up and let them continue behaving the way they are, that doesn't hold them accountable. They need to be held accountable for not being a good partner. And we can explore what that looks like, but that doesn't hold them accountable, and they need that so that they can learn how to become a good partner to you. Because one way to think of marriage, ideally we have this framework that marriage is a continual refinement. It's a continual chiseling away of me and of my spouse on how I can become a better partner, how they can become a better partner. It's an ongoing journey the rest of our lives. But if we become hard-hearted and we're not open to the teaching process, then that's not healthy. And if we let our partner take that position where they're hard-hearted and not open to change or being sensitive to meeting our core needs, we let them off the hook. We don't hold them accountable. And that's unfair to them because they're going to miss out on their development. So that's another reason not to settle for an unhappy marriage. A fourth reason not to settle for an unhappy marriage is then you won't build resentment. When you settle for an unhappy marriage, you build resentment because your top core needs are not being met. And when you just give in to that this is going to be the way it is for the rest of my life, inevitably you start resenting your partner, and resentment hurts you. It's toxic. It's poison. So don't settle for an unhappy marriage, because then you are going to get hurt. You're going to be the one building resentment, and that's toxic for you. A fifth reason not to settle for an unhappy marriage is because you want to retain hope. If you're settling for an unhappy marriage, you're hopeless. But if you decide not to settle, that creates hope. That hope is still possible. That change is still possible. That we can actually somehow learn to get better at this, and my core needs can be met better, and so can yours. That brings hope back. That's another main reason not to give in or settle for an unhappy marriage. So as I've mentioned in other episodes, but I'm going to repeat it here, if you're in a marriage and your core needs are not being met, first step is to bring it up through a soft startup. So make sure you listen to my episode on soft startups. If you do that multiple times and your partner still is resistant to change, then you need to see a counselor. And through the counseling process, ideally that trained therapist can help you guys uncover the causes for the dynamic. Perhaps you're doing things that's making it hard for them to meet your core need. Or perhaps you're married to someone who's just hard-hearted and they are not willing to change. But therapy can often expose that. And after you've tried therapy for 3 to 6 months, if your partner is still hard-hearted and refuses to work on meeting your core need, then you may want to consider a separation, because they may need that to slap them out of their slumber and to get their attention. That is not allowed in a marriage. You're not allowed to act like you have tenure in a marriage and just coast. A good marriage is both partners continually trying to be sensitive to the other person's top core needs. And if one person shuts down and stops doing that, they're no longer a healthy partner, and they need some accountability around that. So if after you bring it up through soft startups, if they're still resistant, after you go through counseling 3 to 6 months, if they're still resistant, they may need a separation to finally wake up and realize they're not being teachable or sensitive. So food for thought for this upcoming week. So those are the 5 reasons not to settle for an unhappy marriage. Number 1, marriage turns into a prison. Number 2, you may be tempted to start outsourcing to get those needs met. 3, it doesn't hold your spouse accountable so that they can improve as a partner. 4th, you won't build resentment. And 5, you sustain hope that change can happen. Thank you for listening to the Marriage Steps podcast. For more marriage resources, go to my website, drwyattfisher.com. That's drwyattfisher.com. And check out my Facebook page at facebook.com/Dr. Wyatt Fisher. If you believe in this podcast and would like to help me reduce the divorce rate by keeping it on the air, please consider becoming a monthly supporter by going to patreon.com/marriage steps. That's patreon.com/marriage steps. Also, if you have fallen back in love, I would love to hear from you, because I would love to have you on my podcast to do a We're in Love scream to create inspiration for other couples. So if that's you, please email me at info@drwyattfisher.com. And remember, your marriage is a living organism. If you care for it, it will thrive. And if you don't, it will die. The choice is up to you. Take care.